Thank you, Chairwoman Luna, and members of the committee. It's a privilege to be here today.
Bro. I cannot stand how
Almost 50 years ago, the last congressional hearings into MK Ultra took place just a short walk from here in the Dirksen Senate Office Building. At those hearings, convened in August and September of 1977, representatives of the CIA told Congress and the American people that its 25-year effort to control human behavior had been a colossal failure.
That's a lie.
Because I believe Congress was never told the truth about what this program actually achieved. In fact, I believe the agency misled Congress in 1977 when it characterized MKUltra as a failure. My name is Tom O'Neill, and in 1999, I accepted a magazine assignment to write a story about murders committed by a group of hippies called the Manson Family. For those unfamiliar with this horrific episode of American history, in the summer of 1969, 4 young people acting on the orders of a cult leader named Charles Manson went to the home of movie director Roman Polanski and murdered everyone they found there, including his 8.5-month pregnant wife, the actress Sharon Tate. The victims were complete strangers to their killers. The following night, Manson's followers murdered another couple in the same grisly.
I'm going to apologize ahead of time. To be honest, I've never really looked into the Manson thing. I know that, by peripheral interaction of other people, some like readings, but really I don't know that much about it. I don't. I've never really been crazy on the studying old serial killers of the past or these cult leaders. It's not really my thing, to be honest. But I'm sure it is for some of you, and so feel free, please, to let me know every conspiracy you know about the Manson thing. This, I can already tell from what he's saying that there's probably a lot more going on that is already known than he either knows or is willing to tell. That's kind of what I can glean off of it. I sincerely doubt that the Manson family was targeting this other family for no reason. I fucking sincerely doubt it. So again, if you know the answer to these questions I'm going to spam and ask here, let me know in the comments.
Fashion. At the time I accepted the assignment, I'd never heard of MKUltra, and I wouldn't for another 2 years after I'd missed countless deadlines, lost the assignment, and fallen down a nightmarish rabbit hole trying to answer the question I couldn't quite shake. How had Manson, a barely literate ex-con, acquired the ability to persuade ordinary young people to murder complete strangers simply because he had told them to?
Yeah, I'm going to be entirely honest. Again, I'm not crazy. I'm a little familiar, but not that crazy familiar. I don't think it's that hard. I'm not going to lie, especially these days. I don't think it's that hard. I think pretty much every influencer on this planet above 10K viewers, and especially if it's a woman, can very easily get this job done without any drugs involved. I'm just saying. I think it's far easier than people realize to get people to do said activity. Just saying. Just putting that out there.
The pursuit of the answer to that question led me to Dr. Louis Julian West, known to his friends as Jolly. West was one of the most influential psychiatrists in America. During his career, he crossed paths with some of the most controversial events of the 20th century, including the Patty Hearst kidnapping case and the aftermath of the John F. Kennedy assassination investigation. In 1977, West was one of 7 academic researchers named in a front-page New York Times story alleging that the CIA had used American universities, hospitals, and prisons as secret laboratories for experiments involving LSD and other drugs on unwitting human subjects. West vigorously denied the allegations. He acknowledged that the agency had approached him, but insisted he had refused because he said LSD was too dangerous and unpredictable to be used on humans. He added that he limited all of his research with LSD to animals. The revelations in the Times led directly to the congressional hearings.
I can just tell this everything this guy has said from the very beginning. I'm sure the conspiracy theory experts, it's like, this guy is like reading the first page of a or first paragraph of the Cliff Notes or something. Like, he's probably just barely skimming the surface. I bet there's a treasure trove of craziness beneath all of this. I'm so sure that I can just tell without even knowing.
later that year. West's denials, however, were effective. He was never investigated, and his name never came up at the hearings. I'll spare you the long and tedious story of how my Manson reporting led me to West, except to say that I eventually learned that in 1967, when Manson transformed into the cult leader we are familiar with today, he and his followers were receiving free medical care at a clinic in San Francisco where West had established a base of operations for a research project he was conducting nearby. After becoming intrigued by the allegations against West, I learned that UCLA, his last academic home, had inherited his paper following his death in 1999. Nearly 2 months and more than 200 boxes later, I found the proverbial needle in a haystack, correspondence between West and Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the architect of MKUltra. The letters begin in 1953, just 2 months after CIA Director Allen Dulles authorized the program, and while West was stationed at the Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, where he was chief psychiatrist at the base hospital.
No way, this
In his
guy's top
first letter to
dog.
Gottlieb, West proposed conducting experiments on unwitting human subjects, including military personnel, prisoners, and psychiatric patients at the base hospital. He then outlined the experiments themselves in 6 more pages that could have been written by Joseph Mengele. Using LSD in combination with hypnosis, West proposed inducing confusion, amnesia, and specific mental disorders in people who would remember nothing of their interaction with him afterward. He sought to develop techniques to extract true information.
Well, I hate to bring up another connection here, but in the Voldemort files, you know who loved to. Well, there's a file in there that says a CIA agent gave a victim a drug that would make her forget what had happened. It also involves a certain president of the United States and a couple other politicians. So thanks for confirming that. And also, I mean, there's multiple references to this drug that he's talking about or that method in those files.
And implant false information in unwilling subjects and to alter the attitudes and beliefs of, quote, previously loyal individuals. In other words, to completely switch their allegiance from one group or leader to another. But it was another sentence at the end of that letter that stopped me cold. These experiments, he wrote, must eventually be put to test in practical trials in the field. Gottlieb's response could hardly have been more enthusiastic. My good friend, he wrote, I had been wondering whether your apparent rapid and comprehensive grasp of our problems could possibly be real. You have indeed developed an admirably accurate picture of exactly what we are after. West replied that there was no more vital undertaking conceivable in these times. There was another document in West's papers that had even more significant implications. It was a 14-page report that West wrote in 1956, just 3 years after he contracted with the CIA. In the report, West described administering LSD and other drugs in conjunction with hypnosis on unwitting human subjects, and then he made a remarkable claim. He announced that he had learned how to replace true memories with false memories in people without their knowledge. In other words, he clarified, it has been found to be feasible to take the memory of a definite event in the life of an individual and, through hypnotic suggestion, bring about the subsequent conscious recall to the effect that this event never actually took place.
Yeah, we've seen this happen, again, even without drugs. We see this happen in therapy. There's a word for this happening where therapists, most of the time unknowingly, but sometimes intentionally, kind of through expectation placed on the patient and abusing that trust, again, sometimes, most of the time accidentally, kind of implants, a false memory. Again, not usually, it's not intentional, but it does happen. Oh, you have repressed memories. Let's try and get those out. And then, of course, the person who's very trusting of course, their doctor, just tries to fill in the blanks. That's what the brain does. Starts filling in the blanks what they think the therapist wants to hear. This stuff happens. It happens commonly in children too. That's why they're you're not supposed to ask leading questions. But yeah, I mean, even without drugs, we know that's a phenomena. So of course, there's some drug that can be manufactured to induce this.
A different fictional event actually did occur. If West's report was accurate, this was not the failure agency officials described in 1977. Quite the opposite. It was, in fact, the central ambition of the MKUltra operation, the means of gaining the ability to seize the control of a person's perceptions, memories, and ultimately their behavior. But there was still one more discovery, and this time I found it in the National Security Archives at George Washington University, the official repository of the CIA's MKUltra records, which were released to Congress after the 1977 hearings. In those holdings was a different versions of West's 1956 report. The original paper had been replaced by a 4-page summary that did not exist in West's files and appears to have been written by someone else. His claims about replacing memories were gone. In their place was a theoretical discussion of LSD in dissociative states.
Wow.
The versions applied to Congress concluded that the effects of LSD and similar drugs on dissociative states had, and I'm quoting, never been studied. Never been studied. In the original report, West discusses
So not only were
observations from
most
his own
deleted,
experiments,
but
including detailed
ones that
descriptions
were
of
still
using
around
LSD.
were edited. Duh.
Two, as he wrote, speed the induction of the hypnotic state and deepen the trance in subjects. Those passages have been removed in the report turned over to Congress. The discrepancy could not have been more stark. Nearly 50 years ago, another congressional committee believed it had been given the truth about MKUltra. It had not. In conclusion, I respectfully submit that these records, some newly available and others that remained outside the government's disclosure for decades, warrant a thorough re-examination of what the program accomplished, what Congress was told, and what may still remain hidden. I'm happy to provide the documents I've referenced today, and I've provided many additional details in my written testimony.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.